I sure hope that they let that guy into heaven, because I guess there's some very strict rules, very strict guidelines before entrance is permitted. You have to be perfect in order to enter God's kingdom, in order to enter heaven. Who's perfect? You have to be perfect in order to go to heaven? What's the alternative? Punishment. Hell, the lake of fire. Yeah, so are those the only alternatives? You can't be a sinner and go into heaven. You have to be perfectly righteous. You have to... Who's going to make it? Sinners are not allowed into heaven. So, who's going to pay for my sins? How are my sins going to be paid for? And how much is it? How much do I have to pay to get into heaven? What's the alternative? If I'm not accepted into heaven, if I'm not good enough, are there repercussions? Is there punishments? Is there corrections? Is there chances? Are people able to be redeemed, to be recovered from the penalties and the fines or the incarcerations or whatever the consequences are for those who don't measure up, who can't meet the requirements to be accepted into heaven, but are cast into outer darkness, which is what many ancient sacred texts say when it comes to accountability before the Creator. That God will, that there is a judgment when it's all said and done, which it's going to reveal who you were when you were alive in your body, what you did with your life, what you did with everything that God gave you. Jesus, who claimed to be the Son of God, who claimed to be God's Son, who came as a representative of God's will and God's person, he said that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the religious people who were considered to be really, really righteous and good, he said that unless they were better than even they were, that they wouldn't make it into heaven. These Sadducees and Pharisees who were representatives of the Mosaic law. So I'm sure the common people weren't very encouraged when they heard that. Then who can be saved? Said one of the rich people, or one of the disciples when when this rich person went away, not willing to give away his wealth, because that was the thing holding them back from following God. He said that he put his hope and confidence evidently in worldly pleasure and worldly wealth. And he said he turned away and walked away. He couldn't accept Jesus' teaching. So one of his apostles, one of his disciples said, "Well, then who can be saved?" And Jesus said, "It's what's impossible with man is possible with God." So evidently, God can still save someone who has those things, but it's hard because usually people are devoted to earthly treasure, and they put God on the back burner, and they treat God as not as important as their personal wealth or their personal endeavors. So where does one put God? Does one put God first and foremost above his own interest? That's very important, because that's something that God is going to expect from people who claim to be followers. If where God stood in their plans and their goals and their sentiments and their feelings and their thoughts in their practice. So this does have broad application and implications to everyone, because everyone is created by God. So every soul, every creature. So God has the right to do what He wills with any of His created creatures, inanimate and animate. So I'm going to have to reevaluate things on a personal level as an individual, because obviously I haven't measured up perfectly to God's standards. So I'm going to have to appeal to His mercy and His grace, and hopefully I'm worthy of it, because I certainly don't want to incur any penalties, that I'm unaware of when that day arises, when I meet God. I want to have a clean slate. I want to be clean and righteous and purified and holy and righteous and without fault when I stand before Him. I don't want to be accused and then be sentenced to hell or the lake of fire. So, but I heard a really good prescription, if you will. I heard that there's a remedy to my dilemma and to everyone's dilemma. There's a remedy that I can be forgiven and I can be accepted, and I can be acquitted of any crimes that I may have committed before God, and that He can pardon my soul. And apparently the only conditions to this are I have to accept and embrace Christ as my Lord and Savior, and accept the blood of atonement, His blood that was shed for my sins on the cross. I guess this took place about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, over there in the nation of Israel. Apparently that was a sacrifice for all people of the whole world, not just for the Jews, but for the Gentiles and the Greeks, and many other people even considered barbarians. a sacrifice was made for them too. All they have to do is receive it like a gift and open it like a present. And once they accept it, they're forgiven and they become members of God's kingdom, and so that they'll be welcomed into heaven without any doubt, without any apprehensions. That we can know for certain that we've met God's righteous demands because Christ met them for us. So he perfectly obeyed God. He perfectly obeyed the laws of Moses, and apparently nobody has on earth outside of Jesus Christ. That is the claim, that Jesus Christ met the legal requirements of the law on our behalf. So he fulfilled the Mosaic covenant and entered in a new covenant, the covenant of the cross.